Yeah, revolutionary greetings to you all, comrades. Thank you very much for joining us again today. My name is Pijino Dimwengu, and yes, today we want to continue the reading. We started reading the book, Defeating Dictators, out of our consciousness that maybe Africa is full of dictators, and in order for us to fight them and defeat them, we need to learn their tactics and something about them a bit so that it can help us in the process of trying to defeat them. This is why we chose this book by Dr. George Aiti. Dr. George Aiti is a renowned author. He's done so many books, including Africa Unchained, Indigenous African Society, Social Systems, and many other books. So this is one of his books, and we've been going on with the reading. As usual, we read some few pages, then we share our thinking in regards to that. Today, I intend that we can cover some few slides that I've actually prepared, which include these political organizations. Then we'll also discuss traditional governments. Then we'll discuss and we'll read again governance. And after governance, we will end with stateless societies. So I intend to cover that. If time allow, then probably we can even look at political organizations in a stateless society. And basically, we'll go ahead and look at kingdoms. So those are the few things that are remaining in this chapter, where we have the kingdoms as well, and you have confederations or confederates. Then you also have the empires, and finally, yeah, we end with the empire. So we'll divide this probably. This class will look at part of political organizations, tribal governments, and statelessness. And then now next class will look at those remaining parts. That will bring us to the end of chapter 2, and then we go to chapter 3. So once again, thank you very much. And as usual, we allow members to read until where they stop, and then we bring another member to come in. So we always read one page per person, but probably read one subtopic per person. So if somebody starts on political organization until that's over, then you take somebody else who pick the next slide. But I want to make it different a bit. I want us to, if we finish political organization, we have a discussion for around 15 minutes about what we've read from there so that we can go to something else, because I've realized that if we combine them together, people don't effectively contribute or actually share their thinking in the whole text. They only select some level of the text. So we will do political organization. Once you're done with the reading, then we share our thinking on what do you think from here, what have you learned, what do you want to say, something like that. So once again, feel most welcome. We have Ambassador also has joined us, Ambassador Joachim Bwambela from State of Africa Diaspora. We have Sister Tapua, we have Brother Barry Shukran, we have Sister Chisomo, and we have Sir Windok. Thank you once again, and feel most welcome. So let's start this. Who is ready to start for us the reading?
I can.
Sister
That's okay.
Sister Tapua.
Yes.
Sister Tapua, go ahead and welcome again. Okay, there's a lady joining us by Frida Kwamboka. I hope she's be joining us from Kenya as well. So yeah, let's proceed. Sister Frida Kwamboka, feel most welcome as well.
Okay. A political organization. In most traditional societies, four main socio-political groupings can be distinguished. The first is the founder group, that is, all those members of the ethnic group who are related by blood to the descendant from the original forefather, who is reputed to be the origin and founder of the settlement. The terms royal and governing are also used to refer to this lineage, to which is usually reserved the privilege of providing the ruler for the settlement. The second group is the commoners, the common members of the ethnic group who are not genealogically related to the governing group and who usually form the majority of tribal members. The third are the strangers who have come to reside in the territory of the ethnic group after having requested and been granted permission. They may live as individuals, single families, family groups, or tribal subgroups. Oh, sorry. That might be breakaways. Sorry, the screen is moving and I'm losing my place. Okay, let me start from the, okay. They may live, oh, come on. They may live as individuals, single families, and family groups, or tribal subgroups that might be breakaways from other ethnic groups or remnants of other tribes. The fourth group is the servants or the civil class. In many West African societies, this class would include slaves, attached dignitaries, or other prominent members of the ethnic group. However, slaves have a different social standing in traditional Africa. They can own property and can even become kings. In general, there are two main types of political organization. Of course, variations have occurred in different tribal societies, but the structures and foundations are essentially the same. In the first general type, Group A, ethnic groups exist as separate political entities and govern themselves independently. In the second, Group B, some ethnic societies come under the hegemony or rule by others, either through the conquest or through voluntary submission. Within each grouping, there is a further differentiation in political organization. In Group A are societies with centralized authority, sachems, sheikhs, and chiefs, administrative machinery, and judicial institutions, chiefdoms, sultanates, or states. There is, however, one fascinating alteration, namely tribal societies that dispense with centralized authority altogether. These societies believe that any centralized authority is necessarily tyrannous, and their fear of oppression led them to do away with centralized authority in whose hands power is concentrated. They are called acephalous or stateless societies, tribes without rulers. Amongst them are the Igbo and the Fulani of Nigeria, the Kru of Liberia, and the Telansi of Ghana, the Konkoba of Togoland and the Somali, the G of Uganda, and Mbere of Kenya. Africa is unique in having the largest collection of stateless societies, but a few can be found amongst the Aborigines of Australia, the Hmong of Southeast Asia, and the Kurds of the Middle East. In this discussion, the term king will be used to denote the head of a kingdom, and the heads of constituent village governments will be called chiefs. The term kingdom will be used for a political entity composed of a homogeneous stock, although the size may vary. Empire will be used to denote a political configuration in which different ethnic groups are ruled under a single monarch or emperor. The existence of Group B, in which ethnic groups come under the suzerainty of others, underscores the fact that imperialism was not invented by the West. In this group, there are also two discernible political cultures. One is an imperial rule under which extensive domestic independence and autonomy are granted to the vassal states. The other type is predicated upon assimilation of the superior foreign culture by the subjugated.
Thank you, Sister Tapua, for that. We will pause here a bit and try to analyze the text we've read and what do you understand or what do you think from those groupings. There's a group A and group B, and there are also classes of people in a society in terms of the four groupings. Now we'll go around and hear what members think in regards to what is written here and whether do you think they still exist up to date. So as usual, we go around and ask members to share their thinking in regards to what you've read. Then we'll go around again. Once we're done with each members giving their input on this, we'll go to the next paragraph. Sister Tapo, do you want to start?
No, thank you. I'll pass for now. Sorry.
Okay. Sir Windhoek? Sir Windhoek? Yes? Sir Windhoek? I can't hear you. Okay. Barry Shukran, do you want to share your thinking with us in regards to what you've read? Barry? Barry Shukran. Okay. Now, who want to share something? Let me go that direction. Ambassador Joaquin Bambale. Anybody? If no, then I'll go through the text again as I try to highlight some few things that I've found here worth us noting down. Yes, Sister Tapua?
Right. I wanted to say, for me, the interesting bit is the word slave and the position that slaves had in the African context.
Yes.
Because,
Tell us what you're thinking in that.
It does not carry the connotations that we have for chattel slavery, where subjugation was a given. This is almost like a position, a job title, but without the connotations that we've associated with slavery. Because if they could be king, and if they were associated with closely helping somebody who's in authority, therefore, they were a respected part of the society and were given the respect as such. So it really makes us think of the difference between this type of slavery and enslavement. And then the argument that has always been put across that those people who sold people into slavery did not quite understand what chattel slavery would be like.
Yeah, thank you, Sister. I think I want to start by there and I'll ask members also to share their thinking. In this first paragraph and second paragraph, the author, Dr. It, is introducing us to four main socio-political groupings. We are looking at political organizations of Africa, or the traditional African setup here. And he said in every socio-political African groupings, there were four main categories. And he says that the first category were the so-called the founders. The founder group probably is the first community or the first family that settled within the area where people are. Where, Africans kept on moving during the process of migration. As we are settling, we are moving from one space to another. So there was the first group called the founder group, and that is all those members of ethnic group who are related by blood to and descended from the original forefathers, who is reputed to be the origin and the founder of the settlement. So, for example, my community, the Luo community, my Luo community moved from Sudan, and I am belonging to a community called the Nilotic community, within a group called the River Lake Nilots. So as the River Lake Nilots were moving in, their key name, our communities have names, and those names belongs to the first founding individuals who founded that sub-clan or sub-family within the settlement. For example, I come from a community known as Kochia. Kochia is believed to be of the name of a person called Ochia. And that Ochia is the first person who moved within the area where my community stays, and the people within that community are called the Kochia. Next to my community, there is another subgrouping called the Kagan. And the Kagan are believed to have come from one of the family members called Agan. Then there's the Game. So those are three main communities within my constituency where one member of parliament rules us. So within one constituency where we have a member of parliament, we have those three main categories of communities under the same tribe. Now it's believed that my community Ochia and the community next to us called Game, the subgrouping called Game, were actually brothers, and therefore my community cannot marry, or my sub-clan or subgroup cannot marry from that sub-clan called Ochia, called Agan, because they are believed to be brothers. So when you talk of the founder group, is actually the Ochia for my case, who then came to that area, and within the Ochia there's now the sub-clan. So from his sons, his sub-clans, and everybody else. Now, him being the founder of that community where we settled first, you realize that his members of his family will belong to that so-called the founder group. Then there's a common second group called the commoners, and they say commoners are members of ethnic groups who are not genealogically related to the governing groups, and who are usually form the majority of the tribal members. So in the community, you realize that either Ochia only had the small family, but it's not that Ochia is the one who gave birth to everybody within the society. So there is now a group of the so-called commoners in this case, or the common members, but they did not come from that tree. Then there's another group now where you call the strangers, who are usually, these are people who have come to reside in the territory of ethnic groups after having requested or been granted permission. For example, in my community in Rangwe constituency in Kenya, where we call Kochia, there are groups of people who have also settled with us within the same or Kochia, and they are not from Kochia. Some have come far away because one of their members came there. They settled, he brought his cousins, he married over here, and they have been staying there for a period of time. These one then could be considered as strangers in that community, but they actually were not treated as such, because once they were given permission and granted a permission to stay with us, now these individuals may have families or single groupings. Then the fourth group, as Sister Tapua said, there was a group called the servants, or the servile class. And in West African ethnic groupings, we are told they were the class which included the slaves, and they are attached to the dignitaries or other prominent members of the ethnic groups. However, the slaves have a different social standing in traditional Africa. They could own property and even become kings. Now, up to that particular moment, what do members think in regards to those four classes? Is it something we see? Is it something we know? Or what is your take in regards to that? So, yes, Sister Tapua, you had share your thinking, but you can go ahead, and then I go to Brother Barry.
It's something that we see in my community in Zimbabwe, because we can identify the founder families by the totem they use and the governance within the territories that they have. And then we also have people who are known by their totems to have come from elsewhere. So it's very familiar. And we also have the commoners, and it's I think we basically agree with the we basically feel our society in Zimbabwe conforms to this, except that we don't quite call people slaves. Maybe it's my mind, or it's just me trying to understand the new meaning of slave. So I will end there for now.
Okay, thank you. Bari, shukran. Bari, shukran. Okay, Sister Chisomo.
Yeah, I do agree with the way they've put it there. I think it's typical in settings like South Africa, where you have people who consider themselves the founder group, or maybe the settlers being what they're calling themselves now, Afrikaners, although they will claim that this is our home, or this is all we've known, we've lived here for 400 years, but they themselves do not identify as Africans. They then change the name to Afrikaners, whatever that means. But the government recognize them as Africans because of the arrangement they made when they became independent, and now it's come back to haunt them. And then you have what's the next one called?
Commoners.
All the founders, commoners, strangers, and slaves.
So in a country, the commoners will be the indigenous, isn't it? Who are not aligned to the...
The commoners are not aligned to the royal family per se, if it's royal family, but they are members of the community as well.
Yeah, so you can still apply it to the... You can still apply it to the... to all these other settings where you have black, white, and all that. Because we're not aligned we become minorities even in our own countries, because the people ruling are those founders who founded almost everything in there, whether they're the corporate world and whatever. So they seem to have the upper hand. Then we become the commoners who are not by lineage aligned to these people. And then you have the strangers who just come in later, like new migrants, whether they're refugees, asylum seekers, investors, and all that. So, yeah, it can be applied in different settings. And also, the divisions seem to cause problems. And then because we are the commoners and we're struggling to have our place on the hierarchy, then we start changing our own identity. I've just come out of a conference where there were this women's conference where one lady was presenting. I can't remember what term she was using. Internalizing, I think it was internalizing colonialism or something like that, resulting in us women wearing long hair, trying to look like them, not wearing our natural hair, bleaching our skins, children, stopping our children from speaking the local language, and they must speak English, and resulting in our children not knowing their language, not being taught in schools. And then they grow up. Then I brought up the issue that then they grow up. When they grow up out here, then they tell you that, oh, I'm not an African, I'm black. My parents are from Africa, but I was born here, so they feel they're different from their parents. So it starts fragmenting into other groups in addition to what they've listed here. Then you have those who came here through enslavement. Then they feel they're different from the new African migrants. Then they say we're not Africans because we came here 400 years ago. And these are contemporary migrants. We are historic migrants. So it seems like our own community in the middle are battling to be recognized up there by those people, the founders, I suppose the founders of the American world, who are also migrants, but they claim they found it, so they're the owners. But then these Africans are saying, I think there's a video that's going around just now where I can't remember his name, this Asian-looking man who says, in fact, the enslaved people have lived there more than all these white people that have come in, who have come in recently to claim, I suppose even the Trumps themselves came later. But they have the upper hand, claiming they're the founders. And then the African historic people don't know where they fit in all this, because they now started also believing they're no longer Africans. They've got their own culture, they've got their own heritage, they've got their own whatever. And it just goes on and on. So
Okay.
whether that's called involvement or what, I don't know.
Okay. Thank you, Sister Chisomo. Sister Tapo, what do you want to say?
No, I was just wondering because the opening sentence in the paragraph says, in most traditional societies. And me being African, I was taking traditional societies to mean African traditional societies. And my sister here has just transposed what's put there to modern societies. And I'm trying to jump and close that gap between traditional African societies and other traditional societies around the world. And it's,
Okay.
trying to figure that out. Are we
Yeah.
talking about current positions or we're talking about?
No, this talks is
At what point does a society become modern?
no, it's
If or traditional?
In
Let's-
today's world,
the society aligned with the so-called current constitutionalism, the so-called modern constitutions, and the rest makes the society fit in the constitutional structures, which is then appearing to be modern. But even as that appears to be, we still recognize that this classification in society still exists up to date, even though they don't exist formally, but they exist.
I would say they exist formally in Zimbabwe.
Okay.
Because what the colonialists did was, because they came in small numbers, they established a government along the parameters of what they had in the West. But in order to manage the indigenous people, they maintained elements of African traditional governance structures, except that the allegiance was to them. So for example, in Zimbabwe right now, we have a situation where we have a two-court system, where if you're from a particular village or a particular group, you can go to your chief court and submit whatever it is you need dealt with legally. And then if it is something that sounds Western and to do with lands and title deeds and whatever, you take it to the other court. So sometimes you go to one court and they'll say, no, this is not within our jurisdiction. You need to go to the other court. So you're moving between two traditions because the indigenous traditional societies, the structure still exists.
Okay. Thank you for that. Of course, below this, if you look at the next paragraph, they're describing various classes of political setups until they introduce the aspect of stateless societies, and they say those stateless societies existed in Africa without the corporate leadership. I think this is also a very interesting concept, that there were societies that existed. If you look at they say that they in group A are society with centralized authority. Now, centralized authority is central government. But they said there is, however, one fascinating alteration, namely tribal society, that dispenses with centralized authority altogether. This society believed that any centralized authority is necessarily tyrannous, and their fear of oppression led them to do away with any centralized authority in whose hands power is concentrated. I think this is the biggest problem even currently as a continent we are still struggling with. A centralized government. We know, like in Kenya, we manage a bit to have what you call a devolved government. Even in the United States, they have a devolved government, the states. But some other countries still exist with centralized governments. And you see, they say that our societies, even back then, were afraid of a centralized governance because they thought that that authority given to centralized government could be very tyrannous. And in that, they did away with any central government. Now, how do they operate? They say they are called akalefas, or stateless societies, tribes without rulers. And this concept is very interesting because when the Gen Zs in Kenya were protesting, they were saying that tribeless, leaderless. So it's basically they were actually a tribe without rulers. Given examples that I would like any member who is part of us here who might know these communities or come from these communities can try to confirm for us. They say, for example, there were among the Igbo, there were also Anfulani of Nigeria, there was a Crew of Liberia, and there was a Atelensi of Ghana, there were Konkomba of Togoland, the Somali, the GA of Uganda, and the Mbere of Kenya. I have heard of Mbere, but I've never gone to a level of understanding their traditional society system. But they say Africa is unique in having the largest collection of stateless society, which means society without central governance. But a few can be found among the aborigines of Australia, the Southeast Asia, or even in the Middle East. So this is a very interesting thing. I know when we go down there, we'll be having a session on stateless society. I think that's what we're going to cover today. So I actually want to also look at the last part when they said, in the same text for our consideration, that the existence of Group B, in which ethnic groups came under surety of others, underscores the fact that imperialism was not invented by the West. In this group, there are also two discernible political cultures. One is an imperial ruler, under which extensive domestic independence and autonomy are granted to the vassal states. The other type is predicated upon assimilation of the superior foreign culture by the subjected ones. I remember, like in Kenya, there's a community next to us called the one community called the Suba community, the Abasuba community. The Abasuba community are believed to be Bantus, but then in their process of migration, they were stuck in the lakes. And along the lake, the so-called Lake Victoria, which was actually Lake Nyasaland, that Victoria decided to change to be her name, Queen of England, the community is surrounded by the Nilotes, who are called the River Lake Nilotes. So in the migration pattern, the Bantus migrated to Kenya, especially in that part of western part, before the Nilotes. When the Nilotes came in my community, they displaced, because you see, it was scramble for land, so they displaced the Bantus. But there's one community that was left in the parts of the lakes, in the islands of the lake. They are called Abasuba. Now, over a period of time, because they've been surrounded by one community called the Luo community, my community,
We lost him.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like lights have gone off or something.
Yes.
Somebody has their hand up. Did they have a question?
Oh, that was me.
All right, okay.
Yeah. Maybe could I just make a contribution whilst we're waiting for him?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think Group B is where Zimbabwe falls into at occupation
lost
by
the
the
screen.
colonialists. Is he back?
Not yet.
All right.
Did we lose
the sharing as well? Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
carry on.
Okay, Because when the colonialists came, what they found was a loose alliance of tribal groups without a king, because the Munumutapa Empire had fallen, and there was an effort to have a succession of different empires, but they could not hold. So what ended up happening was, in the east in Mozambique was the Barwe Kingdom that had a king. But because of the nature of what was happening in what is demarcated as Zimbabwe today, when that king extended his rule over parts of Zimbabwe, it wasn't in the sense that we understand today, where he subjugated them. All they did was pay allegiance to, but nothing really changed for them. So there was this loose alliances of groups, and it kind of surprised the colonialists because they were coming from a situation where they had a monarch, and they were expecting to see all these groups of people under one person. And that in itself made it very easy for the colonialists to then negotiate with one group after the other. So the Barwe Kingdom in Mozambique, that was facing the colonialists as they were coming out of the sea and coming from the south, tried to warn the subgroups in the inland about signing either with the Portuguese or the British. And because these Barwes had defeated the Portuguese, they were urging everyone to sign with the Portuguese, because then it would give them the upper hand. Indeed, the British had to fight to sign different agreements with the different small groups in order for them to occupy Zimbabwe. So, for example, they would say Lobengula signed off the country, but that's not technically true, because he wasn't in charge of the country. They had to sign with different groups of tribal groups in order for them to seal the occupation of Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Sister Tapua.
Yes.
Have you started the second paragraph on tribal governments?
No. We were just discussing, we just continued with the discussion that you were having. You were giving an example of what happened within your area. So I just continued with giving an example of what happened in my area. And the fact that when Zimbabwe was occupied, it was more of the group B, because there was a loose alliance of tribal groups. And therefore the British had to negotiate these tribal groups.
Okay, I think I will have to permit me to read the tribal governments, and I'll read also the stateless governments. Then together we can now start our discussion as well, continue that discussion before we end our meeting. So we have looked at political organization. Then there's now the aspect of tribal government, and it said in most traditional society, political organization began at the village level. Now, when migrating families formed a village, the original founder became the owner of that village. His clan will then constitute the royal family, to which was reserved the right to provide a chief for the village, though there may be different names for the holder of this position. Now, structurally, a chiefdom is composed of four basic units of government. One is the chief, who is the central authority. Then there's the inner or privy council, which advises the chief. Then the council of chiefs or elders. If there are 10 lineages in the village, for example, their heads will form the council of 10 elders. Then lastly, the village assembly of commoners, or the meeting. So those are the key elements of that tribal society. There was the chief, there was the inner council of advisors, which I think the modern society is calling advisors. Then there was the council of elders, like maybe what now is called the cabinet. Then there was the village assembly, which maybe today we call the parliament. Now the chief, often a male, is chosen by the queen, very interesting, or clan mother of the royal family, after consultation with the elders and dignitaries of the royal family. In the Arab, I'm getting some echo, let me try to mute. Now they say in the Arab, for example, in the Arab world, the chief is a sheikh or a naib and is chosen by the council of elders. In some tribes where royal lineages does not exist, different lineages offer candidates for the position. A group of elders then choose the chief from a number of contestants or rotates the chieftaincy among the lineages. If none of these proves satisfactory, a stranger, even a white man, may be selected as a chief. Very interesting here. Such was the case when the Englishman Jimmy Maxen was chosen Odikiro, a village chief, in 1968 and named Nana Onyaisi of Aburi in Ghana. I think this is worth looking for it and doing some study about it. Now, note that no one makes himself a chief. Very interesting. He is selected not by voting, but by consultation and consensus among the Queen Mother and the elders. Once selected, the chief is secluded for a couple of days and instructed on the rules of behavior and injunctions pertaining the chiefship. He is forbidden to go after women. He is forbidden to become a drunkard, to gamble, and to abuse his people, among other taboos. Very interesting as well. Then he must swear an oath to serve his people, to seek their advice, to follow their customs and tradition, and to rule with their consent. If he breaks any of the taboos or his own oath of office, he can be recalled by the queen's or clan mother and dethroned, as among some Native Americans, or distilled as in Africa. The possibility of removal or threat of impeachment as a penalty for breaking the oath serves an effective deterrent against autocracy. Once installed, the new chief may select his own inner or privy council of advisors from respectable, this is very important as well, from respectable notables or prominent men of distinctions in the village. These inner councillors are the first group the chief may bounce ideas off or solicit advice from. In general, the chief is not obliged to take their advice, but he would, of course, be wise not to ignore them. Because if he does, they could withdraw their support and abandon him. This inner council constitutes the first line of defense against despotism. The next powerful unit of government is the Council of Elders, or the Council of Chiefs among many Native Americans, which is a near universal unit of government among the peasant societies from either Asia through the Middle East and Africa to North and South America. The Council of Elders generally has two functions. The first one is to advise and assist the chief in administration of the ethnic group. And the second one is to act as a brake on the chief, voicing dissatisfaction and preventing the abuse of power. The Council of Elders also advise him on the policies he pursues, in both the internal and external affairs of the chiefdom. In executing these policies and in administering his office, the chief constantly has to consult the elders. He may be forbidden to do anything that affects the interests of the chiefdom without the knowledge, approval, concurrence of the council, except in emergency. Without the authority of the council, no new law can be promulgated. In some tribal system, the chief cannot receive foreigner unless a member of the council is present. All decisions initiated by the chief must be approved by the councillors. The council is an autonomous body and cannot be corrupted or suborned by the chief. It's made up of the heads of the extended families in the village who are chosen by the extended families themselves. As such, the chief cannot remove or appoint a council and therefore cannot turn the council of elders into a rubber stamp parliament like what we witness in Africa today. The council meetings are open to the public. Among the Irogus, warriors could appear before the council of the chief and express their views upon public issues. Women could do the same, but only through orators they selected. In the Arab world, a council meeting is called Majlis or Majalis. The ruler of Fujairah, for example, hold an open Majlis at least once a week, attended by both citizens and expatriates. To these Majlises come traditionally minded tribesmen who may have waited months for the opportunity to discuss with their ruler directly rather than pursuing their requests or complaints through modern governmental structures. During the Majlis, the leaders hears grievances and mediates disputes. Anyone under the leader's rule must be granted access to the Majlis. The repository of the greatest political power or influence in all peasant society, however, is the village assembly of commoners. In Africa, village assemblies are variously called Asatena Kese among the Ashanti of Ghana, Ama Allah among the Igbo of Nigeria, Gurti among the Somali, Gotla among the Swana of Botswana, Dare among the Shona of Zimbabwe, Piso among the Sosha, and Ndaba among the Zulu of South Africa. Other cultures have similar tribal conclaves. In Afghanistan, the assembly are called a jirga. It's a standing local body, a tribal council of elders males that make decisions that help guide and govern the tribe. That's the reading. Now let's go through. Members, feel free to come in and share your thinking, what you've learned. Who goes first? Who wanna go first?
Can I go first? Just as
Yes.
something, we in Zimbabwe, people have WhatsApp diaries, where people just meet to discuss. And like you said, the diary is made up of men. So I just happened to join one diary and I was caught and I was thrown out of the diary.
Ooh.
And I was saying, this is modern day. What is it that people are discussing in the diary that I can't take part in as a woman? So I was fascinated to see that certain villages have women appoint someone who can go and speak on their behalf, whereas strangers and even foreigners are allowed to take part in some places. So I'm wondering what's happening to our women. Anyway, that's a side comment. Thank you.
Any other comments in regards to the text?
So when you say the dare is for men, no women.
No, there was dairy. That's what they're saying here. There was dairy, but how it was either of men or women, I'm not sure of.
It's usually made up of men,
Mm.
but these days women can sit and listen and take part. But it was predominantly male, but it's changing form.
Does it involve the chief?
Yes,
So the
because
chief is male.
not necessarily. You also have women
Okay.
chiefs now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have women chiefs.
Mhm. No, in my country, because I think, in Zambia, I don't know about Mozambique, but Malawi and Zambia got independent way back in the 60s, early 60s. So you have Zimbabwe, South Africa, and all these other ones that were a bit late. So which meant the segregation between the black and white was still in practice. And I remember going to Zimbabwe and being told you can't go into certain shops and all this business. So, which means that the traditional practice was still very strong until recently. Whereas in ours, as early as 64, when we had independence, the first thing we were told is that we are all one people. No tribes, no this, no that. We are all one tribe. We all have to learn the
Sister
one
Tapua,
language.
Sister Tapua, kindly co-chair for me a bit, just for some 5 minutes. Sister Tapua?
Oops.
Yes, that's okay. Thank you. I'll do.
Yeah, so I was saying, so when we got independence, we were told, you are all one people. There is no this tribe, this tribe, that. We are all Malawians, we are all one people. And we're all going to speak one language. So in schools, we were taught this one language. So up to this day, we all speak that language, although we will have our other languages from the district you come from. But this language, everybody knows it's taught in, that's how we are taught in school, through that language and English. So from then onwards, because of the type of leadership that we had, which is what they were telling us that it's dictatorship, because he tells us what to do and we just follow. And we followed. So we grew up not using these tribal things or whatever's. So it kind of erased itself, although the elders will kind of keep it in the background and stuff. And then we had the chiefs. But along the way, the chiefs also became appointed by the government. They created a structure, appointed them, so it was no longer lineage or whatever's, and stuff like that. So that bit about stateless, what was it? Stateless something. We do have
Stateless
those
society.
that don't strictly practice all these things because people are appointed and whatnot. As a result, we don't have those counselors that are being described here. So if, let's say, there's a hearing, so it will be in the open, because I know there's a drama that goes on every week. There's this woman chief, so she will hold these cases, but it's just her and her assistant. But the public can come and sit under this tree, and the case is heard publicly. And I remember, I think I've explained this before, I had a case whilst I'm here. So,
Yes.
so in my village, we have a chief who is my cousin, but I don't trust him, so I won't let him handle the case. So I appoint a chief in town where we live. So I ask her to take that case, but then to respect the other chief, she brings in the other chief anyway. But it's not being held in the village, is being held at our house in town. So these chiefs are there. And then you had all these other people who just decided to come and hear the case. But so we don't have this council. What was it? Council of something.
Council of Elders.
Council of Elders kind of thing. No, we don't. So it was just her and this other chief and people from our village who wanted to come and hear, or people from the other side who wanted to come and hear. And members of the community in the location decided the case was being heard. So people just turn up. So there were about 30 something people in the house listening to this case. So this woman came by herself, this chief came by herself. She was the one telling me, oh, there was so and so and so and so brought this one and so brought that one. So not necessarily a council of elders of the extended family or anything.
Interesting.
Maybe there was and we broke the rule. I don't know what happened, but, and I do remember in so many other cases, there's just that one chief. She doesn't call any other people. She'll just, like this woman had what she called a, what did she call it? It's actually an English title, like a clerk or something, like an assistant.
Yes, clerk of court.
Yeah, that's right. That's the only person she mentioned, and I don't remember him even coming to this hearing. But when she had other issues, then she says, oh, I can send my, and I thought, oh, so you have a clerk? And she says, oh, yes.
Okay. All right. Is there anyone else who would like to share what they've experienced in their own part of the world?
But people are trying to bring it back, because what's happened is in the north, is it in the north? Yeah, in the north, we have all these people who migrated from places like South Africa, Zimbabwe, and all these other places, who are kind of Zulus and Ngonis and all these other ones. So they do identify by those tribes. Those are the only tribes we hear so much, Ngonis, Zulus, Indaba this, Indaba that, and they wear all these strange, funny clothes, and they hold these sessions and annual events. And then other tribes are trying to do it, but they're not so used to it. So it doesn't quite work very well as the other Ngonis and the Zulus and the whatnot. So maybe after some decades, it will hold strong.
May we know how you feel about having been forced to learn one indigenous language over other languages?
It's good because now I can communicate with anybody across the country.
Okay.
The other alternative was for us to speak Swahili, because remember we're near to Tanzania and all these other places. But he said, no Swahili, we have our own language and you're going to learn this language. But what we understand now is that language we were forced, or call it forced, was the language from his tribe.
What language was this?
Chichewa, which is Nyanja in Zambia, Mozambique, and South Africa.
All right. Okay. May we have someone else to make a contribution with regards to what we're discussing? The role of the different people within the chief's court. Anyone? I'm going to Frida Kwamboka. Would you have any contribution to make? Frida Kwamboka.
Can I just add one more item?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so, and then on top of that, we had what they call traditional courts. You know, like you have the formal court in a building, in a formal building, in a modern building. So we had these traditional courts. There was one in the town that I lived, traditional court. So it will have a setup exactly like you'd have in court. The defendant stands here, the plaintiff stands here, the judges are in front, a panel of judges. But those judges was a chief I don't know where the chief, which district the chief came from, but it was a chief and 2 others. I don't know whether they were also chiefs or whatever, but there will be 3 people on the panel, and then the person bringing the case and the person defending will sit on the other side, and then us would sit in the chairs to listen. So if you had a case and you didn't, obviously people don't have access to the formal courts. So people came to this court because you didn't pay anything. But when Kamzubanda, after 30 years after he left, then the one who took over and brought this system called democracy and multi-party and whatnot, he abolished it. So now we have that system I was talking about earlier, where this woman will just turn up and then she wants money from you, and then she'll take money from me and she'll take money from the other side. So whether the justice is actually taking place, it's not, because she's looking out for both of you in conflict of interest. Although she gets the case resolved, but it might not be resolved to the satisfaction as to where it would have been held in the traditional court or in the formal court. It's not even binding.
So what we have in Malawi is a situation that does not quite comply to what the writer here said. I'm looking at the screen.
In fact, when you were reading, I was thinking, who wrote this book and for which country was they writing this thing? And when you notice Malawi is not mentioned.
My sister. Can I come in and just say, you know, the paragraph starting, someone has moved the screen. Oh, sorry.
Maybe
Right.
what's his name is back.
Okay. Oh, okay. My brother, are you back? Hello?
No.
Big.
Yeah, I'm around.
Okay.
I'm around.
All right. Would you like to take over?
Yeah, I can take over, but I want to hear what other people also have to say. So Sister Chisomo can finish, and then we get to other people as well.
No, I finished.
Okay.
Tapio was about to make a comment on it.
I was just about to say, I'm looking at the paragraph starting, council meetings are open to the public. The last part, the preceding paragraph before that ends with the statement, as such, the chief cannot remove or appoint a councillor and therefore cannot turn the council of elders into a rubber stamp parliament. Yes, that section there. Because we're looking at a situation where we're stopping people from being dictators, that the system had inbuilt mechanisms within it that would stop people from just running away with power. That should be that will be we ought to be running our own governance systems today.
And they're the most corrupt.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. All right. I'll hand over to my brother. Can you continue?
Okay. Thank you, Sister Tapua. Sister Frida Kwamboka, what do you have to say in the paragraph you've read? Kwamboka? Kwamboka? Okay.
Hello.
Yes. Hello. Do you have something you want to say in regards to what you've read so far?
I'll say that the chiefs had no power to appoint other people who are to help them govern, because if they were to appoint others, it will be seeming that they are like corrupt. So the councils are to be appointed by other people so that they can help them in ruling. So they could avoid corruption in that way.
Yeah, that's very interesting, sister. You are raising it up, because let us look at these categories of then the people make at a chiefdom in terms of the current government structure, and it was listed here as we are starting. that there was the chief. Assume that chief today is the president. Then there was the council of elders, which is the council, the inner advisors. And then there was the council of elders. And you see what you are told, council of elders were representing lineages or villages. In the today's context and African setups and governments today, this council of elders could then be assumed to be more of maybe the ministers or the cabinet secretaries in the current government. But if you were to appoint them on the basis of what the traditional African envisioned and practiced, then they could be people representing various people within or various community within a country. This could then bring that element of everybody within that chiefdom feeling that they are represented because there's an elder who is within the council of elders who will always represent the voices of their people. Now this has changed, and you are told again that it is not the chief who could actually appoint such council of elders, as you're saying. You see, they're automatically chosen by the community they represented, and that's what is coming here, that the chief do not have the power to appoint those councillors. Now today we have a cabinet and ministers who are appointed by presidents, and these presidents then do not consult the community, and these people are not appointed on the basis of a community, but rather you realize if your president is from this community, the whole of his council would be made up of majority of people from his community, and other communities will be left out. And this over a period of time would bring out tension and strife within the community. Others feeling, oh, it is your time for your government to lead and loot the country. We are not part of the government. Like in Kenya here, the opposition leader joins the government from my community. And everybody in my community, once he appointed some few people to the cabinet, says that, no, we are now in the government. Because we feel that that person who is appointed represents my community. And I think this is the wisdom that the chiefs practiced back then, that every council of elders were to represent those villages, then they were automatically going there to be part of the representative of the villages, which is very interesting. And also the element that they say they could not be then rubber stamp. I think, no, wait a debate. If we talk of them being not rubber stamp, then in this level we can consider them as parliaments, the council of elders being like parliaments, rather than being more of like the ministers, because the ministers then would be like the advisors, the second layer of the privy council, which then will form the ministers. Then the council of elders in this current context can be maybe the parliamentarians. But you see, they were not there to serve the president. Today, political parties produce parliamentarians who then serve the interests of the president. But without going further, permit me to allow other members to come in and also share their thinking before I take it that much, because we have limited time with us. Let me get to Michael Bound. Feel most welcome. Michael, are you able to just even unmute yourself and say hi?
Yes, hello, hi. It's Michael Bourne here. Hi, I'm from London. Yes, I've recently not been attending the meetings for I think about a year now. I've been involved in some other activities, so I'm just returning. I'm having difficulty at the moment understanding what we're discussing at the moment, to be quite honest. I'd just like to say that. I don't see we're talking about community groups and ethnic groups. I'm struggling to understand the context of what we're talking about. Yeah.
Thank you, Brother Michael. Thank you, Brother Michael. We started a new class on Sundays called the Pan-African, of course, reading class. On top of what we read on Thursdays for Consciousness Study Group by Kwame Nkrumah, we have decided to have a Sunday meetings where we discuss various books and review them. And we have started by a book called Defeating Dictators by Dr. George Ayittey. So we are reading his books and how he's trying to bring to us now the political organization of the traditional African society. That's where we are in this particular moment. And we'll be going along to read more and more of this book until we finish it. Probably in the next 4 weeks or 5 weeks, we might be done with this book and then go to the next book. So that's where we are, and that's what we are discussing today. To members who might not know Brother Michael are part of the founding members of Consciousness Study Group, which is the main class for Thursdays, which then hosts these meetings. And Consciousness Study Group started their physical reading over 10 to 15 years ago, 12 years ago. And Michael is one of the team that were early enough starting this with our chair, Brother Kwame Christian. And they did that for so many years before we moved online. So when we joined online, we started online at around 2021, 2022, when we were doing the Google Meet, the Microsoft Teams. And Michael has been part of that groupings for a period of time. He has produced dictionary for Conscious and Study Group, and that's why he's saying he's been out a bit. But Michael is one of the early founding members of Conscious and Study Group. But Michael, feel most welcome, and hope you now
Thank you.
better.
Do you think you could produce the name of the book for me? If I can get a copy of it, so which I have an understanding of what we're discussing. I don't know if you could put it in the chat for me.
Yes, I'll do
Thank
that.
you.
I'll do the book.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, comrades. Let's go ahead. Sir Windhoek, what do you have to say in regards to the text? Sir Windhoek? Sir Windhoek?
Yes, one simple question. What is the female chief called in an African tradition?
The English name for that female chief or the traditional name for that female chief?
No, I think for traditional we have got many names, but in my vernacular we don't have it. But what is it called in English?
I don't know. A chief is a chief. Like president is a president, whether female or male is a president.
Is a chief treasurer.
No, I don't think so. Is there anybody who has a title for a female chief?
No, like what I mean is a queen and a king type of situation. Or is it just
No, chief is a chief. I'm not sure, but maybe if anybody has an explanation of the chief aspect is very important, maybe you can share with us. Any other concern, Brother Sir Windhoek?
And I ask it deliberately because you said Brother Michael has done some dictionaries. Maybe he can help us there as well.
No, the dictionary he did is for conscience in book. He has simplified the conscience in book into a dictionary. That's what he did. He has not get interaction with this book we are reading now, but I've shared the book in the chat.
I don't think there is a name for the female one, because also you have to remember that because we're reading a book written in English, so they'll use the word chief, but in our vernacular, it's something else. But even when it's something else in our language, it doesn't have a gender to it. It's just chief.
Okay, yes, I suspected that. General Nunaki, Raspala. General Nunaki?
Yes, son of the lake. Yes, give thanks, my Lord. Give thanks even to the family. Yes, my brother. No, this thing, yeah, it come from the ancient Anunnaki, this structure, you see? Yeah, because even them, when they came here on earth 445,000 years ago, they had to establish a mining station, you see? But fast forward to that, I'll just go to the main point based on this text. You need to remember 10,000 years ago, there was a massive flood on Earth due to the ice caps that melted, and then the sea level rise, etc., etc. So civilizations were destroyed. In fact, all civilizations on Earth were destroyed during those times because they flooded. Hello, so during that flood, they were destroyed. So the cities our ancient ancestors built, because we ruled the world, basically. We didn't just rule Africa. That's why the pyramids are all over the world. So we built civilizations, then came 10 years ago, the flood, push, everything is gone. And then we had to start over. And now it is said, Some of the Africans, they survived the flood. Some of them were in spaceships watching the flood. Some of them, they went under the mountains, which is the underground cities. Now the scientists pretend to be discovering for the first time. And some were hidden in mountains in America, some in Australia, you see, some in Cambodia, which is basically South Asia, to put it that way. So those 8 underground cities or ancient bunkers were built by ancestors because they saw the flood coming and they prepared so that the human race and the black race can survive the flood and start over. So that's why now these main academic scientists, when they talk about these things like these tribal governments, they put it in a white man's misogynistic point of view. You see, they don't put it in a African full world history, because African history is world history. As I'm telling you right now, that this is where we start getting these names now, Nilotes and whatnot. Because it's when, again, after the flood, people were coming out of the mountains and had to start rebuilding, etc., etc. So in our ancient ancestors, they're the royal, if you can put it that way, they are the royal family, the lineage, you see. And then we can say that the other Anunnaki, which is the other black people, are the commoners, you see. And then obviously the strangers will be any other person that is not African. And then with the servants were the human beings we created, you see, which is another story for another day. The slaves were the human beings we created, you see. Yeah, even though in the beginning we didn't have them, because when we arrived here on Earth, we had engineers and workers from the Bantu side who were building these pyramids, who even built the River Nile, because the River Nile is not natural, you see. So all these things they built, but they mutinied against the royal clan, you see, which is the ruling class, because the work was too much, the mining was too much here in South Africa, which is like about more 3,000 years ago, 300,000 years ago. So when they mutinied, it's when the African, so-called African god that most of the African traditions praise. Even in Kenya, I think the Maasai call him Guy. You see, if here as the Xhosa people, we on the south we call him Ramata. You see, yeah. So that he decided, okay, you know what? Let's create a person using in vitro to be a worker to continue with the mining operations, and then the commoners to be relieved from these mining operations because they mutinied. So basically that's how it goes. Yeah, boy, this thing started from the ancient black people more than 400,000 years ago. It's not a thing of 10,000 years now. It's because of, they say it's a thing of 10,000 years because that is after the flood where everything had to start over. Thank you.
Thank you, General Nunaki. General Nunaki is an expert on African history in regards to the Dagon people and the Nunakis. So he's trying then to put that history into context of what we are reading today. Anybody who has any question in regards to that history, you always feel free to get in touch with General Nunaki. But I want to point out some few things here that might also guide this conversation. One is how the chief was being appointed. And I want us to relate this to our current context. Yes, Sawindo, please go ahead. Sawindo?
Yes, I wanted to highlight that once a chief is elected, he is secluded for a couple of days and given instructions and rules by which he should behave himself and manage his community, which really shows civility amongst African societies, unlike they call us uncivilized. And he had to agree to some certain protocols whereby he was forbidden from women, not being a womanizer, not to become a drunkard, a gambler, and those social evils that would compromise his ability to manage and lead his people. And he also had to take up an oath, like we take up an oath of office as parliamentarians and cabinet members and so forth. That's another 5 cents.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted even to talk about it, and let's start to observe it very keenly. One is the process on which a chief was appointed. Like maybe let's assume this chief to be in this context the president. They say that a group of elders then chooses the chief from a number of contestants or rotate the chieftaincy among the lineages. Now, this aspect of rotating the chieftaincy, can current or modern African setup or those so-called countries agree on rotational of the so-called presidency? Can that be an alternative Africa can pursue? And can that then help in the process of curing a lot of post-election violence that do emerge every after elections? Just a food for thought, because we realize that African elections and politics have become about the majority tribes and alliance between the majority tribes. So if this tribe is combined with another tribe, then you become majority, you produce a president. But can the African then try this aspect of rotating the chieftaincy? What do you think? Yes, Awindo?
Yes, not only rotation by terms of term of office 5 years or so, because in some societies, like in the Namibian society, the people of Namibia has forced that the president cannot come from one tribe only. It must rotate amongst the different tribes. And it has happened twice, from one tribe to another tribe, and eventually back to the majority tribe. And going forward, I think the nation is going to stand up again and demand that they should also get it has now become custom tradition for the different tribes and ethnic groups to demand also to have one of theirs as the president. I end there.
Thank you. In Kenya, there have been 2 tribes that have been ruling for 60 years. Sister Tapua?
I've often thought that this could be a solution to some of the problems that we have, because I also think proportional representation is also a solution instead of a winner take all. Because in trying to resolve the Zimbabwean situation, I've been forced to think that possibly in order for representation to take place and not have everything happen in the capital, we need representation from the different groups, from the different provinces, because our provinces are almost demarcated along tribal lines, as it were, because the colonialists wanted to map and have people contained within certain frames. So what happened is the member of parliament for province A might not be a person from that group, and therefore might not even know the requirements within that group. But if we had somebody who's a member of the group, who is beholden to the chief within the group, who reports to the group, it would then mean that fairness and effective development of different places takes place. Because right now, for example, the city where I am in Mutare, the councillor in the place where I live, who is also the mayor of the city, does not stay in the city. He does not even work here. He's in Harare. And I was shocked to hear that it should never be like that. Because if you're going to represent the people, you need to understand and be part of the people that you are working for. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you. But also, let's go ahead a bit. They say that once selected, the chief is secluded for a couple of days. and instructed on the rules of behavior and injunctions pertaining chieftaincy. Now he is forbidden. Let's now look at this also these conditions that the chief were given, and let's assume if this condition were also to be applied to the presidency and the leadership of Africa currently. One is that is forbidden to go after women. Why do you think that? Why do you think? Secondly, is forbidden to become drunkard, to gamble, and to abuse his people, among other taboo. What is your thinking in regards to those three conditions or four conditions that were chief were forbidden against? Do you think it's something we can also introduce to the current setup? Because I believe majority of African presidents today are known to be sleeping with anybody's women the way they want. In fact, one of our former president here was believed that he went to a village of one of the member of parliament and slept in the house of that member of parliament, and the member of parliament had to sleep somewhere else in a hotel. And the whole village knew the president slept in that members of parliament's house with a wife. And these have been the scandals of so many presidents. In my current president today is believed to have actually impregnated another lady whom he has made the minister of defense currently. He has some other ladies and some other babies all over. What do you think these conditions were here, and why do you think they were here, and what could have those conditions up, and whether you think we should retain such conditions for leadership? Anybody else hasn't spoken for me? I'll only go with those their hands are up. Sawindok?
Yeah, the chief must be prohibited from going after.
Sawindok, we can't hear you.
So should be prohibited from. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
The chiefs should be prohibited from going after women, because otherwise they will take third roads and where it does not matter most, because his concubine is there. I understand there was a case there was a case also in Kenya where a third road and a big mansion was built in some village there because the president had a girlfriend there. So instead of services going to where they are needed most, they are compromised because the chief or the leader is also compromised, and he might end up depriving the biggest majority of the society of the services.
Okay, very interesting. Sister Tapua, what do you think?
One of our former, our former president is supposed to have taken over someone else's wife and asked the person to kind of leave the country and again. It's just, I think this is one of that needs to be applied to the current lot of people, because it's terrible.
Okay. Anybody else want to share something in regards to those conditions?
Sorry, when I just come in, I've just remembered something.
Yes.
What do we think of the, what's the new name for Eswatini, where the opposite happens? Instead of keeping the king away from women, he's giving one every 10.
Oh, that king is called who? Mswati.
Mswati,
It's called, yeah, King Mswati. Sister Tapua?
and Brother Pigeon.
Yes.
You also remember President Boris Yeltsin. He was too much, or many a time, under Pushkin and vodka. And instead of leading his nation, he was just playing piano and sometimes issues in those type of things. So that drunkenness will compromise your social standing, your own behavior, and in the end, you will lose respect and you will lose governance over your people.
That's very interesting. But do our leaders today actually take consideration of those requirements?
They don't, because we don't care what they do. We give them a blank check, sign the blank check, and they should do whatever they want. Presidents in many countries are demigods and they don't care much what the society are demanding, because societies themselves take too long to stand up against their mal performances and ill performances and bad social behavior. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Another thing that I'm also seeing here is very important also for us to acknowledge is that the Council of Elders, this paragraph is also very important. It says that, let's read it just to the end. It says that the next powerful unit of government is the Council of Elders or the Council of Chiefs among many Native American, which is a near universal unit government among the peasant society. I'm not interested that they say the Council of Elders generally had two functions. One is to advise and assist the chief, and second is to act as a brake on the chief, voicing dissatisfaction and preventing the abuse of power. As I'd said, this Council of Elders can be, in the context of modern world, the parliament. And their work was to act as a brake on voicing dissatisfaction and preventing abuse of power. The Council of Elders also could advise the president and the policies to pursue both internally and externally, and could constantly ask to consult the elders. The president may be forbidden to do anything that affects the interests of the chiefdom without the knowledge about or approval of the Council of Elders, except in an emergency. And I think that's what probably the current president tried to do using the parliament. They take bills in the parliament for parliamentary approval. But in most of the situations, they even influence the parliamentary process so that the parliament just acts as a rubber stamp to their thinking. They say in some tribe, the authority of the council, no new law can be promulgated, and in some of the tribe system, the chief cannot even receive foreigners unless a number or a member of council of elders are present. Without the council, the chief is powerless and cannot initiate any law. All decisions initiated by the chief must be approved by the councillors and the autonomous body and cannot be corrupted or suborned by the chief. But today we see our parliaments being corrupted, and it's made up of heads of extended families and the village, who are chosen by extended families themselves. Of course, what they can claim modern day today is us voting and electing the members of parliament. But they say as such, the chief could not remove or appoint council of elders, probably now the MPs today. But then they say, and that could make the president or the chief not to turn the council of elders as a rubber stamp parliament. But that is what we are seeing today. Now, how do you think we can solve this? Based on what was being practiced in the past year, as we are reading in this text. Anybody? What was a reaction in regards to that? This act of trying to prevent the parliaments to act as rubber stamps of presidents, the same way they say the council of elders were not to act as a rubber stamp. What is the solution? Of course, they say that they were then appointed by the people. But does it mean that maybe today these so-called politics and political parties are part of the contribution that then makes the president, who is the head of that party, to ensure that they actually tell their members of parliament who belongs to the party to toe the line of the party line, and hence these members of parliament are accountable to the party and the president rather than being accountable to the citizens? And how can we make parliaments not be the rubber stamps of the president? So, Windhoek?
Yeah, that's the problem today. Like members of parliaments are going on a party list. The parties hold their congresses or whatever, and then they nominate, they choose, or they elect amongst themselves people who goes to parliament. And that is in the case of Namibia. So meaning these parliamentarians have got stronger allegiance to the party itself than to the people. So they are first accountable to the party before they become accountable to the society or the community or the nation. The same applies to cabinet ministers. They are solely chosen by the president. And if they are chosen by the president, obviously their allegiance will be to the president and not to the nation. So first they must please the president before they start thinking. So now the system has to be turned around whereby, like we have got a second chamber called the National Council, with representatives that are voted from different constituencies. That one can have, can most probably be influenced by the society, but once they go to that house, they also become untouchable. And when they come there, everybody stands up and greet them as gods, and they cannot be questioned and those things. So what can happen and what should happen is to bring more awareness and consciousness to the society that you are the people who need the service and you are the people who are electing the people. And these people should be accountable to you, and you must have a box. You must have boxes to tick. He's doing this, he's doing this. And if he's not doing that, next time around, he shouldn't return to the office. So awareness to the communities and the societies is very critical in this, to make politicians and leaders accountable.
Thank you, Sawindok. Anybody else want to share something? We are having actually 4 minutes to the end of our class. Anybody else?
Yes.
Yes.
And like in the, I think.
Barry, did you want to speak? Barry? Barry, you are unmuted. Can you go ahead and speak? Okay, Sister Tapua?
I think must be the power the threshold and to be brought lower so that they feel obliged to serve the people and not serve the people, the person in power. Because once they know that people have the knowledge that they can recall someone, then they should be able to recall. That's what I think could be a solution to this problem.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? Barry? You want to say something, Barry? Okay. Nunaki had spoken. Sister Chisomo, do you have something to say or to add something in regards to this? The conduct of the president, as stated here, and also how there was control between the Council of Elders and the president and the intention of coming up with the Council of Elders. Sister Chisomo, do you have something to say?
Yes. No, the last comment I think makes a lot of sense and explains exactly what is going on at the moment, that all these people are appointed by either the party or the president. So they pay their allegiance to that person and not the nation. So I think that's where we have the problem, that the main focus is the political party and its leaders, and the rest of the nation is not even considered. It only comes relevant when it's time to vote. So, and when people say, "Oh, we elect the wrong leaders, we elect whatever," we don't have much choice. We are given the candidates. We don't choose any candidates. We are given the candidates to say, this is the two candidates for presidential candidates from which you have to choose. And we haven't got much choice but choose them. So we have no control over a suitable leader, suitable MPs. It's what we're given, and that's it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Comrades. We have actually come to the top of our session today. We are actually coming to an end of this. And we look forward to continue the reading to the next class. Those who have joined us for the first time, we basically do some reading of this book and a review. Then we share thinking in form of a review. Yeah, so that's what we do every Sunday. So let's come back again next Sunday when we start to deal with what we call stateless societies and how those stateless societies actually survived, so that we can be able to understand more about this. The reason why we are reading this book is to understand the tactics of the dictators and to find a way on how we can defeat the dictators, because the title of the book is Defeating Dictators. And that's what we intend to learn, understand, and have the tactics equipped so that we can be able to know when they lie and where they're lying to us, and we can empower people with the right information so that we can defeat dictators across the continent. Having said that, permit me to bring this meeting to an end, and the recording of these sessions will be available on Tuesday this coming week. Thank you very much, unless there's anybody with any other concern.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.